Bum, 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 Hello and welcome to the Creative Minds podcast. I'm Michael Beck, and in this episode, I'm going to be sharing the conversation that I got to have with my good friend Aekta about giving and receiving feedback. It was a lot of fun, and I hope that you'll enjoy it and that you'll leave this video feeling encouraged. I want to talk a little bit about feedback, something that I've brought up a little bit in the past with some other podcasts and just in the group, but I think it'd be good to talk a little bit more with you because you're an art therapist, so
Well, I'm not an art therapist.
well, not yet, but you're studying, so you got some good insights. And you also have a podcast of yours where you talk a lot about sort of these, how would you say, things dealing with the mind and thinking and self-reflection. So this should be good. Aekta's podcast actually was a big inspiration for me when I was like working on this podcast, but I was kind of like on the fence, like, should I do it by myself and get it started? And I started a podcast and I was like, yes, I can do it. And I will. And here we are.
I'm so glad. Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I'm hoping for with my podcast, is to like inspire other people to express themselves in whatever form that is. Doesn't have to be podcast, but just to, I think a podcast is a good way to start talking about things that we're interested in learning more about or anything like that, and then you can inspire other people to do the same, and I think it kind of ripples out from there. So
for sure. Yeah, much like hopefully the Creative Minds group is, just having these different little like niche spaces where we can just share like what we're interested in, and then as people kind of like latch onto it, we find like different little communities and connections of like more people who are just like on the same train of thought. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like you make new friends, and also you can like learn, like you helped me with those watermarks, which turned out to be a super simple thing to do, but because I'd never worked with Lightroom before, and because I didn't even know there was a simpler way to do it than through GIMP. I was trying to do it through GIMP. There we go. So yeah, I mean, if I hadn't known you, then I wouldn't have figured out there was an easier way. So it's just like all about, helping other creative people and like helping each other out, I think.
Oh, for sure. Well, and speaking of helping people out, hopefully we can help people out a little bit, just thinking about like criticism and giving it and receiving it. And so I was thinking about criticism myself, and I had a few thoughts. But yeah, I wonder what you think, like what criticism is like most challenging to hear?
What is most challenging? I think it's like, for me personally, it's the criticism that I'm like also aware of myself, like that I'm already trying to work on. And if someone is still criticizing me on that, it's just like, because I'm already so hard on myself, I'm just like, oh wow, I thought I did this. I thought I worked on it, but I guess I didn't work on it enough. And so it kind of makes me feel worse, even worse in a way. But then at the same time, it's a reminder that it's that much more important to work on it. So I guess that's my answer.
For sure. Yeah, I think I feel that too. And also sometimes if it's something that I maybe like wasn't super aware of, and then like someone like points it out, and then it's like, oh no, like, and maybe I thought that I was doing better than like I was, or just it changes like the perception.
Yeah, it just puts on you. It's a kind of like a blind spot. We don't see our blind spots, and then when it's pointed out, it's like, oh, now there's this new thing I have to be conscious of.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of some examples. The only thing I can think of, it's not a good example. Well, I guess there's no bad examples, but
Yeah.
I always used to be super self-conscious about my nose because I thought my nose was too big.
Oh.
So, but the other day, actually, someone complimented my nose,
Well, there we go.
but it made me self-conscious again. But I
Even
was
with
like,
a
it's a
compliment.
compliment. Yeah, even with a compliment. So that was actually good, I guess. I guess that wasn't criticism. But it's just the only example I can think of is like,
Yeah.
um but I should think of a better example because that's a very like
That was a
that's
good one
something
though.
I can't change. I mean, unless I get plastic surgery. If someone's
Right.
like, you
Yeah.
have a bad nose, I have to like get plastic surgery to change it, but I probably wouldn't go that far. So I'll think of something else later on
Sure.
in the episode.
Yeah. Do you feel like that? Yeah, like even though it was like sort of reframed things in a positive way, just
Mhm.
someone pointing it out was like enough to like kind of strike a nerve.
Um, Not really. Like, I mean, in a weird way, at first I was like, "Oh no, my nose!" Like he's
Mhm.
mentioning my nose. I'm always been kind of, thought it wasn't the best feature of mine. But then because he complimented it, I was just like, well, uh, maybe it's not so bad after all. Like I've just been too hard on myself.
Mhm.
Um, so in that way, it was like a good thing because after that, I did feel like a bit more confident. I felt like, oh, I don't have to really worry about this. If one person compliments it, maybe it's all in my head.
For
So
sure.
that's kind of how I felt about it. Yeah. So if it was weird at first, but then it was a positive thing,
Yeah.
overall. Yeah.
And yeah, if one person likes it, then in theory, you could think, well, maybe other people like it too.
Yeah, either that or it was I had this weird feeling. Was like, what if he somehow knows? Like, I've never said anything, but he somehow just guessed that this is the one, like, this is that thing that
No pun
like,
intended.
yeah, no pun intended, that he knows that I'm like, uh,
uh,
self-conscious about. So he had to say something, to be nice. Then I'm getting porn. I'm like, what if he's just being nice because he knows I'm self-conscious? But it's like he could have no idea. I've
right.
never.
He wouldn't have known. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was interesting.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that example.
Yeah. Sorry, it's a silly example, but still gets us thinking about feedback in a different way, I guess.
For sure. Yeah, I shared this with a little bit with you, but I was thinking that in terms of um like feedback, there needs to be like a sense of trust between like two people. Um
Mm.
and I hope like in our groups, if criticism ever comes up, that there is like a level of like trust between everyone involved, that we know that we're friends, we're there for each other, and hopefully like whatever we're sharing is done in love and not to like hurt or diminish anyone.
Mhm.
um I think there also like needs to be like trust from the person who's like sharing, that if they're gonna give you some like you know hopefully is like advice is not gonna be taken poorly and kind of like you know thrown back in your face, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we maybe have all like known someone or like have been that person at one point that seems like can be like really sensitive and like doesn't take criticism well, and then all of a sudden people like don't want to give you anything but compliments.
Yeah. I've been there before when I was younger.
Mm.
Um, and I think it depends really on the environment and who you're getting that criticism from. Like with my family, it's different. And I think it depends on like your maturity level too. Like when I
Hmm.
was younger, I was way more sensitive to criticism because, I just wasn't as mature in realizing that what people say about me doesn't define me. It's not who I am really at the
Hmm.
core. It's just something about me. And I used to over identify with people's feedback, and like compare myself a lot. And just a lot of unhealthy stuff that really only, I think, with maturity and experience and age and like a lot of like self-reflection and stuff, um, self-reflection and also talking to other people who are actually like coming from a place of love. Not to say that those people who criticized me weren't coming from a place of love, but like the way that they did it wasn't as like there's different ways to give criticism. So just talking to some people that were a little bit more gentle with it, like still they would still give me feedback, but they knew a better way to do it. Got me thinking, and like all those things combined, I realized, this is just one small thing and there's no point in obsessing over it. It's just something to consider, but it's like, at the end of the day, it's not who I am. At my core, it doesn't and the fact like stressing about it doesn't change it, it makes it worse.
Exactly.
So it's like, just keep it in mind. And sort of this is where like mindfulness comes in for me. It's like just being mindful of our own thoughts as they're happening, and like sort of like watching our like own inner stories about ourselves, and like watching our own dialogue with ourselves, because oftentimes I think we can be our worst critics. I think most people are their own worst critics. So then you have to sort of start with being gentle with yourself, and then the more you can like be more compassionate with yourself, the more you realize you can actually change those things you're trying to change. The reason you weren't able to change them before was because you sort of weren't as kind as you needed to be. And so it's like a weird way, like you slip up more because you're too worried about it. Whereas if you just relax a little bit, you just naturally become confident because you're more relaxed. So it's like a paradox.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like I remember learning that in like one of my psychology classes. Like the more that you like think about something, like your body just like reacts to it, and like it just makes it that much worse.
Yeah, it's like a negative feedback loop. But if you just sort of like notice it, just let it go, don't like get fixated on it, then naturally like it'll just go away, or you'll find a more creative, like more constructive way to improve it. Yeah.
But I had two thoughts. One you kind of already spoke about, but what I'm wondering is if someone was maybe like listening to this and maybe like knows or suspects that they might have trouble like receiving feedback, what would you encourage them to try to do that maturity work and get more comfortable receiving feedback?
Okay. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is I heard this, a really wise friend of mine told me this. And this was one of my teachers that I'm still friends with today. And so she definitely gave me a lot of feedback. She's my high school art teacher. And so she definitely had to give me feedback on my artwork and stuff. But she also did it in a way where she was just like, this is me and my perspective. And this is like from my experience, based on my knowledge of art and also my knowledge of you as an artist. And, I see your strengths. And because I see your strengths, I also see how working on these weaknesses could make your strengths even 10 times more powerful. And so sort of like when receiving feedback, try and consider what the other person's intention is. Because like obviously my art teacher's intention, as she explained to me, was really to be helpful. But some people will just criticize you just for the wrong reasons, just because they want to, because they feel bad about themselves really. And it's kind of like a bullying sort of thing. And, they have no other healthy way of dealing with that. So they just, their way of dealing with it is to criticize other people, unfortunately. So you kind of have to like get a sense of like what the other person's intention is, and that can help you receive the criticism, better. If you already know that that person is like just saying something, to be mean, then don't take it seriously. I mean, it could still be true, but you don't have to take it to heart, which I think that a lot of people can. And also the other thing she said was like people what people say are a reflection of themselves. No matter like what it is, it's because it's coming from their experience and their perspective. So it's really, even if they're saying something about you, it's a reflection of themselves. So keep that in mind too, is like, that's not to say that the criticism they gave you is something you shouldn't consider, but also maybe in some cases, for example, with the example of someone who's just trying to be mean, it's just a reflection of them, and their issues that they haven't dealt with. So they're like kind of taking it out on you. So just try and like, it comes with practice, and, the more you receive criticism, the better you get at gauging and like, just someone's emotional intelligence and knowing like, is this person coming from a place of good intentions or bad? But I think most people can tell, like, you don't have to be the smartest person in the world. I mean, unless you're just at a very sensitive place, then anyone saying anything can just, make you trigger a lot. But in that case, then, take that as an opportunity to sort of like notice yourself and how you respond, and like just notice your patterns. Like, do I freak out even when someone I know who loves me gives me criticism, just as much as I freak out when someone who, doesn't really care about me? If it's like the same, then maybe it's something you have to work on. Like maybe you have to figure out why even the person who cares about you, even when they give you criticism, why you still like, why it's still like difficult. And then that goes into a whole another, like, that's just, that would be a whole nother episode, I think. But
no,
I think
really
what it comes down to is like awareness of the other person's intention, and then awareness of your own response, like own reaction, and like sort of figuring out a pattern with yourself. Yeah.
For the people who give you criticism that isn't done with good intent, it reminds me of a piece of wisdom that I recently learned, which I think was don't let someone live in your head rent free. Because like just gauging like who's saying it, if it's like not someone that you care about, it's not someone that you value, it's not a close friend or family member, like why like let them take up space in your mind.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes I think that even if it's not someone there can still be people out there that are, especially if you ask for criticism, because sometimes it's like we ask for it because we want to improve, but then we like don't take it well, which is a little ironic. But when you don't ask for it and someone gives you criticism and it's not someone that's a little bit more difficult to take, but you can still gauge based on how they say it. If someone's just like comments on a video and says, "This is stupid," like, I mean, you don't want to take that seriously, because like, okay, at least that person could give reasons for why they said it's stupid. Then it's criticism, right? If they're just going, "This is stupid," they just want to say that, and you shouldn't take it seriously. But if they're like, if they phrase it differently, or if they say like, because nothing is truly that simple. Nothing is truly just stupid, especially like something creative. People put work into it. So I think you can tell when someone's intention is good is if they have more than just two words. If they're like, this is good, but you could improve this. It just depends on like how they say it. Even if it's someone random, I think you have to see it like, how are they saying what they're saying? And that's really a case-by-case thing, I think, to gauge like whether it was well-intended or not.
Yeah, for sure. I think you touched on my other question, which was going to be like how. Well, I guess I'll ask you again and see if you have a different answer. But how would you best like to receive feedback from people?
So this goes both ways. This is how I like to give feedback and receive feedback. I like to point out what's good, like the strength, at least one, preferably like two, like more strengths than weaknesses. And this goes back to like positive psychology. and the theory, it's like a theory of learning where they say that the best teachers are the ones that really, they help you see the best in yourself so that you build confidence. So if you naturally build confidence, even the things that you're weak on, you'll naturally get better at them, because when you're more confident, you're just more relaxed. And when you're more relaxed, you can finish things and do things with more ease. I mean, just because you're relaxed. And so it's just how it works physiologically. So the best way to give feedback is to, compliment the person or what they did well, and then point out what's something that they can improve on. So really look for those strengths, and then to balance that out with the criticism. And I guess, was that the question? The question was, how would you like to receive? Yeah. So that's how I would like to receive feedback too, is like, I would like somebody to not just tell me this is wrong, this is wrong, this is like this. Just don't give me a list of things I can improve, because I've probably already thought of it and I'm probably already giving myself a hard time. Like, tell me what I did well. So at least I know that I did something well.
Right.
And sometimes it might be hard to find those things that I did well, because sometimes like we can kind of mess up and maybe we didn't do, something, the most of it too well. But I'm sure that there's always something, something good. And at least because receiving, then at least I feel like, okay, well, this person isn't just trying to like bash me or whatever. Like, they actually see, the bigger picture, and they see what my intention was. They see what I did well, what I was trying to do. So they understand that, and they're not just trying to, because some people like to that's just what they want to do for fun. They just like to go around and be like,
Right.
this is wrong. Just, you know, uh, why can't I think of examples of this? Like, I think it really goes back to that person being insecure when they do that. It's like going around, it's kind of like micromanaging. It's like saying like, well, you should cut the fruit this way and not that way.
Yeah.
And it's like small things like that sometimes. And I think that when people are like that, it's hard to, receive feedback from them, because if all they ever do is point out what's bad, then you kind of feel like, oh, I must just be this like bad person, or like I'm just so imperfect, there's nothing good about me. It depends on who it's coming from too. Like, if it's coming from like a parent, then of course that's so much harder to deal with, because you want your parents to like be nice. But if it's coming from a random person, then that's easier, because you have distance from them, so you can be like, this person just like wants to be mean, that's just what they do, is pick on people. But yeah, it goes back to like your other thing that we mentioned of like, no matter who it comes from, even if it's criticism that's coming in and it's not pointing out anything good, it's only pointing out what's bad, then realize that's not who you are. It doesn't define you. And also try and think of like why that person might be only pointing that out. It's probably because they have their own insecurities, and that's their way of dealing with it. So yeah, it's my long answer.
No, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, I'm thinking that I would hopefully, people can be encouraged to seek people out that are going to give them valuable feedback. Because I think there's like two sides. There's the ones who are going to only criticize you, and there's like ones that are like only going to inflate you and like tell you great things. And neither one is that's like not good feedback. Those are comments, but like valuable feedback is really going to tell you, again, what you did well, but is also going to tell you, how you can improve and do better, in the future. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really liked how the way that your teacher helped you. That sort of reminded me of like an illustration teacher that I had. They like, I could tell that they like really appreciated and valued what I had to offer enough that when they were giving me criticism, I knew it was because they just wanted me to be that much better.
because they saw like the potential. And
Exactly.
so they wanted to, and they could even see it before. Sometimes I feel like our teachers and mentors and people that are really supporting us can see like how far we can go even before we see it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's why they want to help us and like give us constructive criticism, is because they really believe in us. And so, that's definitely criticism that you want to hear, because
Mm-hmm.
that person's like invested in you. So it's not
Yeah.
meant to be mean or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think we need to surround ourselves with people who can really see even like the good things about us that we might like overlook, because again, we can be like really hard on ourselves. It's like people that can like call out the things that they notice that we're really strong in, but also can have that vision of like where we could be. And so they'll challenge us on things because they know that if we could improve in those areas, we would be so much better for it.
Yeah, exactly. It's important to surround yourself with people that are truly rooting for you,
Mm-hmm.
and not people that are just trying to use you or something, or whatever reason. Real friends, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. I guess that'd be another discussion. Real friends.
Yeah, that can be a whole nother podcast. What defines a real friend
uh,
versus yeah. I kind of don't even want to use the word fake friends, because I can't even like, if a friend is fake, they're not a friend.
exactly.
Like I can't even use the term. So
Exactly.
um but sometimes we can be involved with people that are they're not talking to us necessarily because they care about us and our well-being, like want to see us like grow. They might just be like, because they can get something from us. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, and I mean, there's sometimes those types of relationships are like not always bad, but you still got to have some decency for the person, because sometimes we do just have people in our lives just because they can help us with something and we don't necessarily connect with them in any other way. But you still got to have some decency with each other when you communicate, and a friendship can develop from that. Even if it's something starts off as a transactional thing where you just meet
Mm-hmm.
someone because you had something to get, or like exchange, you could still develop a friendship. It all depends on like, whether you have that decency and whether you can find like something positive to connect about.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, this has been awesome. Before we go, do you have any sort of short, last little thoughts of encouragement for anyone watching?
Lots of encouragement. I would say, don't let your inner critic stop you from doing what you really want to do, because it's better to do something and not have it be perfect, because it's a place to start. You can go somewhere from there, than to not ever have done anything because you were too much in your head with your own
Mm-hmm.
criticism, and then one day you might regret that you never even tried. So always try and put your best foot forward, and you can always improve on something, but if you never take the first step, then how can you even know how to improve?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's my last thought
That's
on
awesome.
that whole topic.
And yeah, I was going to forget, but yeah, you've been doing, seems like you've been taking a lot of like kind of first steps lately. And I wanted to leave it open for you to like share some of the things that you've, let people know what you've been working on.
Okay. I feel like this is like a big reveal or whatever, because I haven't really talked about this much in the Creative Minds meeting, or I've only really talked about it with one other person, and that's because they like really were encouraging me. But I've been writing. I've always written poetry, and I'm kind of on and off with it, but recently I've been getting into it more. And I've been too nervous to share, so I'm kind of like being a hypocrite now. It's like I'm not taking that first step of like putting it out there. But I've thought about it. But I am sharing at least with that friend. I'm sharing it with someone. I'm just not sharing it with like everyone. So I want to, and I have shared it on my Whispered podcast. Um, I did share a couple poems on there. So I'm like, okay, I did something.
Yeah.
But that's something that I've been getting into, and that I've started and just kind of made it. It's more like a personal practice for me. I'm not really trying to like, I think it'd be fun to one day like publish a poetry book, just because I feel like I could do it just to see, but it's not like, that's not my motivation. My motivation with it is like, this is cathartic to me to like write the poem helps me understand situations in my life basically. But I've also been like singing a little bit, and just I think it's fun, and I could see myself covering songs, and like even I've made a couple songs before, but never really, again, like never really, it's that one hobby that I'm like, that I've always had, but never delved into more seriously. I just dabble with it. So that, I guess that's something that I've been working on, that it's the place of criticism that I might struggle with the most. Maybe that's why I haven't gone into it.
Sure.
No, really, the main reason I haven't gone into it because I want to focus. I like to build on my strengths, and my strengths right now is like visual art, and that's also where my career is going to go with art therapy. But at the same time, I do enjoy these other outlets of creativity. So just a little bit at a time, I guess, just as long as I have some supportive people that will give me constructive criticism with it, then I'm sure I can keep moving forwards with it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Do you want to let people know where they can find and reach you? Like you mentioned, you have 2 podcasts that you have.
Oh, okay. I have my Aekta's Quircuries podcast. It's spelled QUIRK dash Q CUE and then dash REEZ. Don't ask me why or how I came up with that name. I think I actually talked about that in one of my earlier episodes on that podcast, but it's just something quirky. That's the idea of it. That's my podcast. You can find that on basically all platforms that have podcasts. And if there's a platform that doesn't have it, tell me. So, because right now that Anchor has told me it's everywhere, because that's what I use to make my podcast. And then the other one is this is only for a niche audience who's interested in this kind of thing, because it's not a normal, like a regular podcast. It's like a whisper podcast. But if you find whispering relaxing, then you can listen to my whispered podcast. And that's just called Aekta's Whisperings. And again, it's on all platforms. My name's spelled Aekta. That's probably another thing I should say, because most people don't know how to spell it. So yeah, you can, I always mention, like, you can email me. Anyone who listens to my podcast can email me at aektaunity@yahoo.com. That's AEKTAUNITY@yahoo.com. And then I have Instagram. I have Surging into a Cool. I'm sorry. These are, maybe we should put this in the
Yes. I'll definitely. No, you're good.
I'm just spelling it out, but it's like I have weird names for everything, so I don't want to even try to spell that out.
For people watching, I'll definitely leave some links below so people can definitely follow you and check out what you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, but this was awesome. Thanks so much again, and thank you all for watching.
Yeah, thank you. It's fun.